Welcome to another edition of your On-Air series for Citi Business Festival 2025. This is our final week. We're focused on digital economy, and today we're answering two important questions. So, who or what are fintechs, and how are they changing the way we live and work? Don't forget, the Citi Business Festival is brought to you by Absa Bank, MTN, and Zonda Tech. When you come back, I'll tell you who my guest is as we delve into how fintechs are changing the way we work in this ecosystem. Welcome back. So what is a fintech? How important are they in our financial sector? And why have they become so pervasive? To answer those questions, I have a guy who, he's so passionate about the sector, now he's known as FinTech Kwame. Kwame Awaga is a big man. He is a board member of the Africa FinTech Network, and of course the president of the Ghana FinTech and Payments Association. Kwame, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you for having me.
Did your parents name you FinTech Kwame, or it was given to you?
I think that's a name I took, just so that I could be branded as such and be identified as one leading the industry.
What is interesting is that if you mentioned that name 20 years ago, nobody would know what the hell FinTech was.
Yes.
But it's amazing how now it's almost a word we use every day.
Yes.
So when we say a FinTech, what do we mean?
I think let's not think too far.
Okay.
FinTech is just the amalgamation of finance and technology.
Okay.
So basically the application of financial or digital solutions to deliver financial services.
Simple. So the tool is the technology.
Yes.
The finance is the product.
Is the product.
I see. So are fintechs financial organizations or technology companies?
So it can be both.
Okay.
So when this whole narrative started, so I always say that fintechs have always been with us. But one of the things we need to understand that is that they have not always been at the front end. They've always been at the back end in the financial sector. But we need to understand that during the 2008 global financial crisis, that is when it became pervasive for them to decipher between the compliance and then the front-ending product. And so therefore, fintech became a thing. So, you know, during the 2008 global financial crisis, when that happened, the banks were basically thinking about compliance and regulatory issues. So then the fintechs were like, okay, we've always worked with you. We've always been at the back end. But right now, you are not able to, face the customers directly. And you bear with me that banks have always not been able to reach the last mile.
Yes.
And this was a very important conversation which needs to be, identified and worked on. So the fintechs were like, okay, we can rather reach these people faster than you can.
Okay.
And so then, why don't we then provide the solutions, the customer-facing solutions, and you handle the big issues when it comes to compliance and regulatory side of the whole conversation. And that's how fintechs became a thing.
I see. So are there different types of fintechs?
There are a lot. Now, one of the things I want to also decipher today on this channel is for us to understand what fintech is. Let's cast our mind back.
Okay.
I already gave a definition of what fintech is, but let's understand that fintech is not separate from mobile money.
Okay.
Fintech is not separate from cryptocurrency. Okay. Now, just like how in a household you have a mother and you have the children, fintech is the embodiment of digital payments, of cryptocurrency, of insurance technology, of remittances. So the industry is growing and is big, and there are new innovative things coming on daily.
Let's take our time. So fintech is the parent.
Yes.
Out of it, we have digital payments.
Yeah.
We have
cryptocurrency. Yes. Which one on the blockchain?
Which one on blockchain?
Yeah.
We have remittances.
Yes.
And then we have insurance technology.
And so we have mobile money. And we have wallets.
So they are all strands of fintech.
Is it? Yes.
So there's a massive sector.
It's a massive industry. It's a very massive industry.
Okay.
Yes.
But it didn't appear so, because of the five you mentioned, would you say which is the biggest?
There's actually more. Remittance and mobile money and digital payments. 3 actually.
Remittance, which is essentially sending money from the outside into a country.
Yeah.
Through
from the diaspora into the country.
So remittance, mobile money, and digital payments will be the top 3.
The top
crypto
3.
is also growing.
Yeah,
and
crypto is
insurance.
also a growing industry.
So is FinTech in the form you've described, the top 5, is it more a developing world issue than developed world? So for example, Ghana, Bangladesh, Pakistan will have more FinTechs than say US, Europe?
Yes, so I always say that, yes, that's the correct thing to say. So FinTech is more a developing country context. And I've always, stuck to the fact that FinTech in itself, or the tools or the technologies that make FinTech viable are more applicable in the context of developing countries like Africa. Okay, so we have technologies that are running or that FinTechs are running on, like the distributed ledger technology, DLT. We have the blockchain. We have artificial intelligence. We have, the Internet of Things, Web3. These are all the technologies, all the tools
that the FinTechs run on.
That the FinTechs leverage to provide front-facing, customer-enhancing products.
Quite interesting. So we need to distinguish between the tools or the platforms.
The tools and then the services, the products.
Wonderful.
Which are mobile money, cryptocurrency, all these others we mentioned.
You gave a bit of history about 2008.
Yeah.
By the way, in Ghana, which is the biggest? Is it mobile money? Will it be remittances? Will it be payments? Do we know which FinTech has the most penetration? Which type has the most penetration?
Currently, I would say that would be the mobile money industry.
Mobile money.
Yes, followed by the remittance space.
Remittance.
Because as at April, we have over 300 billion Ghana cedis transactions on the mobile money platforms alone.
Whoa. So Momo is clearly number 1.
Momo is clearly leading, yeah.
And then you feel remittance.
Remittances, yeah.
I'm told the last time they calculated over $6 billion.
6 billion, 4.5 to $6 billion.
Per annum?
Yes.
If you multiply that by,
is what comes into Ghana.
But that's $6 billion. If you multiply that by
10,
that's about
60 billion.
So Momo is still bigger.
Yes.
What about payments?
So payments is just the providing of those tools for businesses. So you notice some companies use or ask for POS systems, or they want to use a QR code. And so you go to a restaurant and then you are asked to just swipe your card on their POS machine or just scan their QR code. And so those are digital payments rails or channels that the FinTechs also provide for these businesses.
So those are the tools. So it looks like things like in digital insurance and they are not that big, right? The other ones you mentioned.
I mean, insurance in Ghana has not really has under 5% penetration in Ghana, and so I mean a lot of more work needs to be done there. Then we also have embedded finance, which is also coming up. I mean, the Bank of Ghana has initiated calls for the introduction of the digital credit lenders, the digital credit providers framework that is being put up. Then we have open banking that's also coming up. Then we also have cryptocurrency. Of course, the governor mentioned that from September 2025, we are going to start, licensing crypto or the regulatory framework for crypto is going to be out. So there's a lot of other adjoining industries or sectors that are coming up or emerging out of the whole FinTech industry. And so it's a very vibrant, very large industry, and I think there's a lot happening.
How did FinTechs become so important?
Yeah.
You mentioned the financial crisis. Some people also talk about M-Pesa.
M-Pesa is basically mobile money in Kenya.
Yes, as the example of how people saw its
relevance,
viability in the African context. So if I ask you what led to the explosion of FinTech, would you say it's M-Pesa? Would you say are you able to identify what made FinTech become so powerful in Africa?
So, if I were also to ask you a rhetorical question, that are you happy or have you ever been happy with your traditional banking services?
Oh, of course, I'll have a problem.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely not.
And that is the same narrative that we all carry, that the banks have not really been consumer focused.
Consumer friendly even.
Yes. So that is basically what FinTechs bring to the fore.
Okay.
So, like I said, during the 2008 financial crisis, fintechs have always been with us. Like I said, they've always served as technology service providers to the banks.
Okay.
So think about your ATM machine, the technologies that the fintechs run on, or the banks run on. These were services that were being provided at the back end by these fintechs. But like I said, during the 2008 crisis, we realized, okay, there's a need for financial inclusion. And like you earlier mentioned before the interview, financial inclusion has been, at the dominant area of making sure that financial access reaches everybody, okay, the underserved, but the banks have not been able to achieve that. So we realized, okay, looking at where we are headed now, the concept of M-Pesa came as, okay, at that time, in 2007, 2006, you could send credit to somebody via your feature phone, your mobile phone, without any hindrance. Okay, and so that concept brought about the fact that, okay, if I could send maybe 10 CDs to you via a mobile phone, via a USSD channel, can we do same with money? That's how the whole concept started. And so it was tested in 2007 in Kenya and became a success, and then in 2008 Ghana also started it. But the banks were not really for it when it started. The banks were like, okay, what is, what was the business of telcos or mobile money service providers, or, the telecommunication industries in the financial industry? So they were not really interested in it. They were not forthcoming with it. And right now the train has moved and left.
So they are now trying to catch up.
They are now trying to catch up. Yes, so that's how the whole conversation started. And just from the idea of sending a text message, now we have that same solution being delivered in the financial services industry, and it's amazing.
This is the Citi Business Festival, our honor series, and this morning we're discussing the evolution of fintechs, essentially how fintechs are changing the way we live and work. My guest is FinTech Kwame, who's a board member of the Africa FinTech Association, and he's also the president of the Ghana FinTech and Payments Association. When we come back, he will try and answer a couple more questions. So, how have fintechs changed the way we live and work? What are the key success factors for fintech to become a driver for economic growth? And what kind of future does he see for the fintech sector? Stay with us. Welcome back. This is the Honor Series for Citi Business Festival 2025, brought to you by Absa Bank, MTN, Business, and of course, Zonda Technology. Today we are discussing fintechs and how they change the way we live and work. My guest is FinTech Kwame. Kwame Awaga is a big man in the fintech sector. He just returned from an important conference. He's a board member of the Africa FinTech Association, and he leads the fintech efforts in Ghana, president of the Ghana FinTech and Payments Association. So Kwame, talk to me a bit about how fintechs are changing the way we live. Explain to some listeners the applications of fintech and how it's changed the way we live and do business.
Okay. So currently we have in Ghana, for instance, or across the world in Africa, we have a thriving youthful population. Okay. And this population basically makes a chunk of the entire spectrum of individuals in the world or in Africa. Now, these people are tech savvy. They are not really interested in, long processes and all that. For instance, going to the bank. So I'm going to give you some practical insights. Now, these are people who always want things at their fingertips. Okay. So then, with this understanding, we can attest to the fact that they want things easy and fast. And that is what fintechs bring to the fore. Speed, trust, and confidence. So they want the trust, they want the speed in the industry, and they want the confidence. For instance, just imagine, so I started my working in the Ministry of Finance. So in the Ministry of Finance in Ghana here, there are some banks dotted around the ministry. So let's say on a normal day, I have about 1 hour for lunch. Let's say I spend 30 minutes of that 1 hour to eat lunch, and then I want to access a traditional bank, or maybe go to the bank to do any transaction. Now, I go to the bank. Of course, I have to move from wherever I am to the bank. That takes time and effort. Then I also get to the bank. Of course, there are long queues in the banking halls. Okay. Now, I also have to wait to go through that whole queue. of course, by the time I'm done with my banking transactions or whatever I went there to do, that 30 minutes would have been exhausted. So there is lack of productivity and time wastage and cost trying to access a banking service. Even just imagine back then trying to get your financial statements. You have to go to the bank, pay for it before it is given to you. Now, gone are also the days where e-commerce was not really a thing. Now we have FinTech platforms that are embedded into this e-commerce platforms, and you can do your payments once you buy anything on any online shop, and it's delivered straight away to you.
Wow.
So this is what we call the trust, the confidence that fintechs are bringing to the fore.
And of course, the speed and the convenience.
The speed and the convenience. So that is how it's making our lives easier. And the things that brought about this is the high mobile penetration, internet availability and accessibility, and data costs.
Okay.
You know, because of all this mobile penetration and all that issues, it has driven down the cost of assessing your daily financial needs. And I've always maintained that having financial access is one of the things that kept Africa or Africans from accessing financial independence and freedom. But now we have digital credit platforms like Fido, like Affinity, that with your Ghana card, you can easily create a digital wallet or bank account without having to even step foot in the bank account. In the banking hall. Just
access to credit.
Access to credit, you know, for businesses and all that. So it's making our lives really easier, faster. And
Are the financial institutions evolving? You mentioned Fido.
Yeah.
There's Affinity. There's a few other Solis and Co. Is finance waking up to this new reality early? Because the traditional banks still, even though they do technology stuff, they still go through the loan process traditionally.
Yeah.
So for example, when Affinity or these guys come on air, they market the fact that they are using mobile in a way that tells you that traditional banks are not. What is the missing link with the traditional financial institutions?
Well, okay. So because traditional banks or commercial banks as we know it are more, you know, based on a lot of regulatory and bureaucratic issues, or they need to be very compliant. And aside that, they also have the brick and mortar system. I mean, as a fintech founder, I don't necessarily have to open a branch dotted all across the country. With a laptop and Wi-Fi, you know, accessibility or internet accessibility, a fintech company can operate anywhere in the world. Okay. And so, like I said, the commercial banks are now waking up to this reality, but they've always known that these are things that we're going to take them out of, you know, the mainstream. So this is what is happening. Fintechs are now at the front end, providing services to the customers, and the banks, as we know it, are doing the heavy lifting at the back. Maybe that's compliance issues, making sure they are up to standard, or validating the fintechs. Because fintechs don't hold the funds. Okay, we don't hold the funds, and the banks do that. So they have to make sure the hardware, when it comes to you know, compliance related issues, are done by them. So yes, they understand some of these things, and so of course banks are not going away anytime soon. But you know, the fintechs are going to be providing the customer.
Well, but what a bank is could change, right? I remember at the recent event you did 2 years ago, so there was a big debate about compliance versus innovation.
Yes.
Which one is more critical for the survival of the financial sector or whatever? How did that debate end, and where do you sit in that debate?
Regulatory compliance, as we know it, from the regulators and policymakers, would always need to catch up with innovation. Like I said, this industry is growing at a rate that it cannot be stopped. And so regulators cannot match up with our energy. And so they need to always learn from us, give us the room to operate, and then build on those successes or those success stories. And like I said, when mobile money became a success story in Kenya, starting from Kenya, Ghana was now trying to understand. But that train had long moved, and the regulators had to now come in. I mean, even for instance, now, the telcos in Ghana had to differentiate their financial arm, which is the fintech arm, which is from the
traditional
telco business.
Yeah.
So, and that is regulation that has now even permeated in our industry 2-3 years ago.
Long behind.
Wow. You know,
when the change actually occurred.
So I think you understand the whole narrative now. And
so for you, innovation is what drives the growth. Regulation comes in to streamline it so it doesn't destroy itself.
So that, you know, the financial sector was actually built on trust. And you don't want to, as a regulator, get people to not be excited about that trust, or, you know, feel distrust. Like how, I mean, for instance, like what the e-levy did, you know, to erode that trust. So you make sure that, okay, whilst you are also putting your checks and balances in place to regulate this industry, you are making sure that these innovations do not disrupt the sanity of the banking industry or the financial sector.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We are still talking to FinTech Kwame. What areas of innovation are we seeing in the FinTech landscape?
Yeah. Currently, open banking is coming up.
Okay.
The draft guidelines for open banking.
What is open banking?
Open banking, where you can have, so open banking is basically open data.
Okay.
Where, you know, there's, in the banking sector, in the financial sector, there's a lot of data moving around.
All right.
And this data is, I mean, the Bank of Ghana has their own data. The financial institutions have their own data. But how can we consolidate this data for the benefit of you, the customer? That's what basically open banking is.
And that's one of the areas of innovation we're seeing. Is that the most important?
That's where we are headed.
Okay.
Yes.
I see. Now, what are some key success factors for the fintech sector? What are the things that need to be in place in the economy to allow the fintech industry to thrive? Okay.
So for Ghana, what actually heralded or gave us the mandate to see the growth of fintechs were 3 policies.
Okay.
The national financial development financial inclusion policy,
okay,
the NFITS, National Financial Inclusion Development Strategy of Ghana. Then we also have the Cashlight Roadmap and the Digital Financial Services Policy. Okay. These were policies enacted during the early 2000s, from 2015 thereabout, to accelerate the uptake, adoption of digital financial services in the country. And so this policy actually ended in 2023. And so there are others that are coming up. And for instance, like the crypto regulation that is coming up. So these were some of the policies that initiated us into this things that we are seeing now. Yeah.
So there are 3 critical policies that you believe.
Yes.
So, but beyond the policy environment, are we seeing finance go into research? Because usually you also need some research to drive innovation, correct? A lot of the gadgets we use were founded by universities working with private sector together. How do you see that within the fintech context, in the African context? Are we seeing money go into research to develop new products? Is that something that's driving growth?
I think all that is mostly private-led.
Okay.
Because most of the fintechs in Ghana that have raised funding were not mostly from Africa or from Ghana, sadly. And so most of this research-tailored funding or things that have been done are from the diaspora, from the West, and all that. That is why, for instance, we at the association, we were lobbying to see the launch of the 50 million FinTech Growth Fund that the current government has promised, to see how we can build local capital for some of these things. You talked about research. That is very critical, research and development. And then we also are looking at maybe raising local capital, local entrepreneurs. Because honestly, from where I sit, honestly, Bernard, from where I sit, I have seen a lot of innovative solutions being built by local startups and local entrepreneurs that can rival any other fintech platform around the world. And so we need to invest in them, and we need to provide them with the resources, and that is not being done locally. And so I think this is a clarion call for all of us locally to champion some of these discussions.
How large is the fintech community in Ghana? How many companies, for example, are members of the association?
Not just the association. The association is made up of both licensed entities and unlicensed entities.
Okay.
But you know, as a regulator, the Bank of Ghana mostly deals with the licensed entities, which currently are numbered at 60.
Wow.
So we have commercial banks that are actually 23 now, and fintechs are actually 60, and there's more of them coming up. And so, and they are all licensed under the Payment Systems and Services Act, which mandates that as a fintech, you need to, have the regulatory support to undertake your activities.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
I want you to close by telling me what future you see for the sector in a couple of minutes. How do you see the industry in, say, 10 years?
Honestly, Bernard, I can't phantom.
It's too much.
It's too big. It's too much. Because we are talking about embedded finance, where everything that you do, even your mobile apps, every mobile app or every business would have a fintech component in there. So you don't need to use cash to pay for certain goods and services. Once you, maybe, for instance, let's take going to the club, or maybe, going to have fun with your friend, and the club already, or the pub already has its own mobile app, and they have already embedded a fintech payment solution in there. Once you are done buying your drinks or whatever, and you want to check out, they automatically know how much you owe, and they debit your account of that amount. So that is where the future is going.
I see. And it's an exciting future, certainly. We've been talking to FinTech Kwame Awaga. He is a board member of the Africa FinTech Association and the president of the Ghana FinTech and Payment Association, talking to us about how fintechs are changing the way we live and work. This has been part of our Honest series. Today is day 2 of our final week, which is on digital economy. We'll see you next time. Have a good morning.